Asterisk asterisk. The night was filled with fire and smoke. The battlefield stretched across the ruined valley, and every sound was gunfire or screams. A young human soldier named Daniel crawled through the dirt, his armor broken, his rifle low on energy. He was far from home, fighting on a planet he could barely pronounce, a world painted red by war. He had been told that this war was about control, resources and power, but to him, it was about survival. Each night he wondered if he would see the next morning, and each morning he thanked the stars that he was still breathing. His squad had been scattered, his commander was gone, and the enemy kept coming like a tide that never ended. Daniel pushed himself against a half-broken wall, his chest rising and falling. The air smelled of ash, and sparks floated like dying stars. Somewhere nearby, he heard movement, not the heavy march of soldiers, but something lighter, almost fragile. He gripped his weapon and aimed, his eyes sharp despite his exhaustion. From the shadows, a figure stumbled forward. It was not human. Her skin glowed faintly blue under the burning sky, her long hair tangled with dust and blood. She wore strange, torn clothes, and her steps were weak as if each one might be her last. Her eyes bright silver like moonlight locked onto his. For a moment, Daniel froze. He had seen aliens before, enemies in armor, killers with blades and guns, but this one looked nothing like them. She was small, trembling, and her arms were bound with cruel chains that cut into her glowing skin. She was not a soldier, she was a prisoner. The girl fell to her knees, her voice breaking. "Please, help me," she whispered. Her words were strange but close enough for him to understand. Daniel's training screamed inside his head. He should have turned away. He should have called it in. He should have kept moving. But something in her eyes stopped him. He saw fear, yes, but also hope, desperate hope. He lowered his weapon, stepping closer. His heart pounded as he cut through her chains with his combat knife. The metal clanged softly against the stones, and she gasped in relief. Her skin shimmered faintly when touched by the blade, like starlight against steel. "Quiet," he whispered, pressing a finger to his lips. The enemy was everywhere, and if they found him with her, they would both be executed. He pulled her to her feet, but she was too weak to walk. Without thinking, he lifted her into his arms. The burning sky above roared with the engines of warships. The ground shook with explosions. Yet in that moment, Daniel thought only of keeping her alive. He ran through broken alleys, his body aching, his lungs burning. Every shadow could hide death, but he kept moving. Behind them, voices shouted. Soldiers from the enemy patrol had noticed something. He ducked into an old bunker, its roof half collapsed. The place was dark, filled with dust and silence. He placed her gently on the ground, his hands trembling as he checked the door. The blue-skinned girl looked up at him, her lips pale. She spoke again, her words soft, almost musical. "You saved me." Daniel shook his head. "No," he said quietly. "I'm just trying to survive." But deep down, he knew it was more. He could have left her, but he didn't. Something about her felt different, as if fate itself had placed her in his path. Her silver eyes closed, and for a moment he thought she had died. But then she breathed again, weak but steady. He watched over her through the night, every sound outside making his hand twitch toward his rifle. Hours passed, and dawn finally came. The enemy retreated for a short time, leaving the valley quiet. Daniel turned to wake her, but she was gone. No footsteps, no trail, nothing but the faint shimmer of light on the bunker floor where she had lain. He searched frantically, calling out in whispers, but she had vanished as if the world had swallowed her. His heart ached with a strange emptiness. He wondered if she had even been real, or if his tired mind had created her from smoke and fire. That night, as he sat alone with his rifle across his lap, he looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, she was alive. He believed it, and though he did not know her name, he promised himself he would never forget the blue-skinned girl with silver eyes. It was a promise that would change his life forever. 10 years had passed since that night in the ruined valley. 10 years since Daniel had carried the blue-skinned girl into the shadows and watched her vanish like mist at sunrise. He had told no one, not his commanders, not his friends, not even himself in the mirror. It was a memory buried deep, locked away, yet always burning at the edges of his mind. Life moved on, wars ended, treaties were signed, and soldiers like him were forgotten. Daniel returned to Earth, where the skies were calm and the cities hummed with neon light. He worked as a mechanic in the lower districts, fixing ships that belonged to merchants and traders. His hands still carried scars from the battlefield, but his eyes carried scars that no one could see. Every night he looked at the stars wondering if she had lived, if she had escaped, if she had ever remembered him. Sometimes he told himself she was only a dream, a ghost born from exhaustion and smoke. But deep inside, he knew better. Then the sky changed. It began with silence, all communication. Satellites froze at once. The news screamed of strange energy signatures moving toward Earth. Panic spread through the streets as the night sky lit with thousands of streaks. Ships descending like falling stars. Defense forces scrambled, cities locked down, and everyone whispered the same word: invasion. Daniel watched from the rooftop of his workshop, his heart pounding like a drum. For the first time in years, he felt the same fear he had felt on that battlefield. But then something strange happened. The ships did not fire. They hovered above the world in perfect formation. Sleek and glowing with strange blue light, from the largest vessel, a single smaller craft detached and descended slowly. It did not carry weapons. It carried a message. It landed in the capital, and the world held its breath. News feeds streamed. The images everywhere. People pressed against screens, waiting to see who had come. The ramp lowered, and she appeared. Daniel's breath caught. His chest tightened. His eyes widened in disbelief. It was her, the girl he had saved 10 years ago. No longer wounded, no longer fragile. She walked with grace, her chains replaced by flowing robes of silver and deep blue. A crown rested on her head, glowing faintly. With energy, around her marched guards in shining armor, their movements precise like living statues. She was not a prisoner anymore. She was a queen. The crowd gasped. Reporters shouted. World leaders stared in shock. But Daniel could not hear them. All he heard was his own heartbeat and the sound of her voice as it carried across the air. Translated for all to understand. "I am Queen Serenia of the Luthari," she declared, her voice calm but filled with power. "I come not to conquer, but to fulfill a promise." Daniel stumbled back from the rooftop screen. He could hardly believe it. His hands trembled as if the past had come alive before his eyes. That night, as humans across the globe argued, feared, and speculated, Daniel sat alone in his workshop. His door suddenly shook with heavy knocks. He opened it with caution, only to see armored figures standing there. Their leader stepped forward and spoke with authority. "You are requested by the Queen." Daniel's world spun. He was escorted through the city, people staring as the alien guards walked beside him. Some looked at him with envy, others with suspicion, and many with fear. Finally, he was brought before the massive vessel where she waited. The air shimmered as he entered the grand hall. The walls glowed with blue light. Strange symbols danced across the floors. And at the end of the chamber sat Serenia. Her silver eyes locked onto him the instant he arrived. She rose from her throne and walked down the steps, her steps elegant, yet filled with something personal, something human. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "10 years ago," she said softly, "you carried me from death." Daniel could not move, could not speak. His voice broke as he whispered, "It was you. You're real." She reached out, her glowing hand brushing his scarred one. The hall grew silent, guards lowering their weapons, attendants watching in awe. "You saved me when no one else would," she continued, her voice lowering so only he could hear. "I swore that day I would return, and now I have, not as a girl, but as queen." Daniel's mind spun with questions. Why him? Why Earth? Why now? But before he could speak, she leaned closer and said words that sent a shiver. down his spine. "I did not forget you, Daniel, and everything will change because of you." Outside, the world was already on edge. Governments debated, military forces prepared, and whispers of war filled the air. To some, Serenia was a savior, to others, a threat, but to Daniel, she was something far more dangerous. She was a memory that had come alive, a secret that had returned as destiny. And as the hall darkened, her crown glowing brighter, he realized the truth. The rescue 10 years ago had not ended that night. It had only begun. Asterisk, the world was divided the moment Queen Serenia stepped onto Earth. Some hailed her arrival as a miracle, a chance for humanity to rise beyond its limits. Others whispered of betrayal, invasion, and doom to the governments and military powers. She was both a gift and a threat. To Daniel, she was a memory wrapped in living flesh. For 3 days, the Queen's ships floated silently above the skies of Earth, casting long shadows that reminded everyone of their fragility. News feeds ran endlessly, some calling her an angel, others calling her a conqueror. Crowds filled the streets, praying or protesting. Some carried banners that read "Welcome Queen," while others shouted "Go back to the stars." Daniel sat in a chamber that felt larger than any cathedral he had ever seen. The ceiling glowed with soft blue light. The air hummed with unseen energy. He was not there as a soldier anymore. He was there as her guest, or perhaps her prisoner. Serenia stood before the leaders of Earth, her presence regal yet calm. Her guards lined the walls, their glowing armor radiating silent authority. The human leaders sat stiff in their chairs, their faces masks of suspicion and forced diplomacy. "I come not to enslave," Serenia said, her voice steady, "but to offer alliance." The words hung in the air like fire. Some leaders leaned forward with interest, others with clenched jaws. "Alliance?" The Chancellor of the European Federation repeated, his tone sharp. "Or control?" Serenia turned her silver gaze toward him. 10 years ago, I was nothing but a hunted girl. I was weak, broken, and ready to die. A human saved me, not for gain, not for power, but out of mercy. That act taught me the value of your species. Humanity is not weak, it is noble." The chamber grew silent. Every camera in the world broadcast her words. Every person who had doubted her now hesitated. But not all were convinced. The general of Earth's Defense Command rose, his voice harsh. "Your ships circle our skies. Your soldiers walk our streets. You speak of peace, but your presence feels like a blade at our throat. Why should we trust you?" Serenia did not flinch. She raised her hand, and in the center of the chamber appeared a glowing projection. Vast fleets of black ships filled the image, monstrous vessels armed with weapons that glowed with crimson light. "These," she said, her tone heavy, "are the Draxan. They are the empire that destroyed my world. They are the ones who hunt my people. And they will come for you. They always come. Humanity will face them sooner or later, with me or without me." The leaders shifted uneasily. The Draxan ships looked like shadows carved into steel, each one larger than any Earth vessel. Even through the projection, their presence carried dread. Daniel watched quietly from his seat near the back. His fists clenched as he remembered the battlefield of long ago. He remembered the smoke, the chains, the hunted girl. He knew she was telling the truth, but he also knew that fear ruled the hearts of men. Then Serenia did something unexpected. She stepped down from her throne-like seat and walked directly toward Daniel. Her crown glowed faintly, her silver eyes never leaving his. The guards shifted, but did not stop her. "This man," she said, raising her hand toward him, "once chose compassion over cruelty. He risked everything to save me when I was nothing, and because of that, I stand here today. I call him protector, and I choose him as my bridge between our worlds." The chamber erupted, voices rose in chaos. Some shouted in anger, others in shock. The camera zoomed in on Daniel, his scarred face pale with disbelief. The president of the Pacific Union slammed the table. "One soldier does not decide the fate of Earth." Serenia's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "No, but his actions prove what your species can be. If you cannot trust me, then trust him. Daniel felt the weight of every eye in the room. He had not asked for this. He had not dreamed of this. Yet here he stood, a mechanic pulled back into the storm of history. He swallowed hard, his voice shaking as he spoke. "I don't know if Earth should trust you," he said, "but I know you are not lying. The enemy you speak of is real. I saw it. I fought it. If we stand alone, we won't survive." The silence that followed was heavier than any battle. The leaders looked at each other, suspicion fighting against fear, pride clashing with survival. Finally, some nodded. Some looked away, but none walked out. Serenia turned back toward the chamber, her voice strong. "I offer Earth a choice. Join with me, and you will stand not as prey, but as allies. Reject me, and when the Draxen come, you will stand alone." The proposal was made, and the seed of destiny had been planted. As the chamber emptied, Daniel remained seated, his mind racing. He had been pulled into something greater than himself, greater than Earth. He remembered the promise he had made under the burning sky 10 years ago, to never forget her. Now, it seemed she had never forgotten him either. And somewhere in the shadows of the galaxy, the Draxen stirred, their eyes already fixed on Earth. The days after the Queen's proposal were filled with unease. Governments argued behind closed doors, news channels twisted every word, and people filled the streets with either hope or fear. Some believed Serenia's alliance could save Earth. Others believed it would destroy it. But in the middle of this storm stood Daniel. He never wanted to be a symbol. Yet every camera pointed at him, reporters shouted his name. Children painted his scarred face on walls, and strangers whispered as he walked by. Some saw him as a hero, others as a traitor who bowed to an alien queen. Daniel ignored them all. His thoughts were trapped in the memory of the night 10 years ago, the night he had carried her through smoke and fire. One evening, Serenia called for him. He was led through shining halls aboard her flagship, corridors lined with glowing symbols that pulsed like living veins. Finally, he entered her private chamber, far quieter than the throne room. The walls were filled with flowing water and glowing plants from her world. The air smelled of strange flowers that reminded him of rain. She stood by a tall window, looking at the endless stars. Her silver eyes reflected the galaxies beyond. "Do you wonder why I returned?" she asked softly. Daniel hesitated. "Every day," he admitted. Serenia turned, her expression unreadable. "You think I came for politics, for survival, for war," she said. "But the truth is deeper. 10 years ago, you saved me. And that act shaped everything that followed." She raised her hand, and the air shimmered. A vision appeared before them, not a machine but memory itself. Daniel saw her as a young girl again, running through forests of glowing trees while monstrous figures chased her. The Draxen, towering in black armor, their eyes red with cruelty. Their blades crackled with energy as they hunted. "They burned my cities," Serenia whispered, her voice breaking, though her posture stayed firm. "They enslaved my people. They chained me. I was meant to die on that battlefield, but you gave me another path." The vision shifted, showing her escape, her rise. The years of struggle, battles fought in distant skies, her people crowning her as queen. She stood before armies, her crown shining, her voice rallying the weak into strength. "All of it," she said, her eyes finding his again. "Because I remembered one human soldier who carried me instead of killing me." Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to deny it, to say she would have survived without him, but deep inside he knew it was true. His choice that night had planted a seed that grew into destiny, yet shadows lingered. Serenia's voice grew colder. "But the Draxen have not forgotten me. They know Earth gave me shelter that night. They know humanity touched my fate. For that, they will not spare your world." Daniel felt the weight of her words. He had seen their ships, their cruelty. He knew she was right, but fear gripped him too. "And if Earth chooses not to join you," he asked, "what then?" Her silver eyes darkened. Then Earth will stand alone, and when the Draxen come, there will be no second. Rescue. Silence filled the chamber, broken only by the gentle sound of falling water. Daniel's mind spun with doubts, not about her, but about humanity itself. Could his people set aside fear and pride to trust her, or would they push her away and face destruction? As he turned to leave, Serenia spoke again, her voice softer. "Daniel," she said, "I never forgot you. In every battle, in every crown I wore, I carried the memory of the human who saved me. That memory made me queen, but it also made me something more." He paused, his hand tightening on the door. "Something more?" he asked. Her gaze held his, glowing faintly. "A promise," she whispered, "that if you ever needed me, I would return." Daniel left the chamber with those words carved into his heart. But shadows followed him, not just from the stars, but from Earth itself. In dark rooms, secret councils plotted. Some leaders whispered that Serenia's story was a trick, a performance to gain control. Others feared that Daniel himself had been turned into her puppet. And far beyond Earth, in the cold void of space, the Draxens stirred. Their fleets grew larger, their claws sharper, their eyes locked not only on Serenia, but on the small blue planet that had dared to shelter her. Daniel walked the streets that night, the neon lights flickering above. People stared at him, but he barely noticed. He remembered the battlefield, the girl's silver eyes, the promise in her voice. And he realized something. The shadows of the past were not fading. They were coming closer. And soon, they would cover everything. Asterisk. The promise of alliance had shaken Earth, but not everyone believed in it. In government halls and hidden chambers, suspicion turned into fear, and fear turned into schemes. To some, Queen Serenia was a savior. To others, she was the beginning of humanity's downfall. And at the center of all this stood Daniel, the man chosen as her protector. He never asked for the title, yet it clung to him wherever he went. The media called him the Queen's human. Whispers on the streets called him traitor, and even old comrades from the army avoided his eyes. Daniel tried to ignore it, but he could feel the tension tightening like a rope around his throat. One night, as he walked through the corridors of Serenia's flagship, a soldier from Earth's Defense Command stepped out of the shadows. His uniform was crisp, his voice sharp. "You don't belong here. You've been blinded by her tricks." He hissed, "She isn't here to save us. She's here to control us." Daniel's hand tightened into a fist. "If she wanted to conquer Earth, she would have done it already." He said coldly, "You know that as well as I do." But the soldier only smirked. Not all wars are fought with guns. Sometimes control comes with promises. Then he disappeared back into the shadows, leaving Daniel with unease that clung to him like smoke. The whispers grew louder in the following days. Earth officials who had once nodded politely now avoided Serenia's envoys. Strange accidents began to happen, systems failing in her ships, sabotage in supply lines. Even assassination attempts disguised as riots shook the streets. One evening, as Daniel stood guard beside Serenia in the council chamber, a sudden blast tore through the hall. Smoke filled the air, alarms blared, and soldiers rushed in. Serenia was unharmed, shielded by her guards, but the message was clear: someone from Earth wanted her dead. She looked at Daniel, her silver eyes calm but sharp. "The enemy is not only in the stars," she whispered. "It is here among your own people." Daniel's blood ran cold. He had always known humans could turn against each other, but to see them turn against her, the very one who came to save them, made his stomach twist with anger. The traitors revealed themselves soon after, a secret faction within Earth's Defense Command, calling themselves the Steel Dawn, spread across the networks. They declared that Serenia's alliance would enslave humanity, that Daniel was her puppet, and that only they could protect Earth's future. Riots broke out in several cities. People clashed in the streets, some waving her symbol, others burning it. Earth was dividing itself before the true enemy even arrived. Daniel confronted one of the captured traitors, a man bound in chains. Why? Daniel demanded. Why betray your own world? The man laughed bitterly. Because you already betrayed. Eat, he spat. You gave our future to her, and when she leaves, or when her enemies come, all that will remain of Earth is ash. Daniel's fists shook. He wanted to hit him, but he knew anger would not change the truth. The betrayal was not just in the shadows. It was spreading like fire. That night, Serenia called Daniel to her private chamber again. Her face was calm, but her voice carried weight. I knew this would happen, she said. Your people are divided. Some fear me, some hate me, and some worship me. But if they cannot unite, the Draxen will destroy you all. Daniel looked at her, his voice low. And if my people never trust you, he asked, what then? Serenia stepped closer, her hand brushing the scar on his cheek. Then I will still fight for you, she said softly, because I made a promise to you long ago, even if the rest of your world rejects me. For the first time, Daniel saw the weight in her eyes, not as a queen, but as someone carrying the ghosts of countless battles. He realized that betrayal was not new to her. She had lived with it her entire life. But still, the danger was real. Each passing day brought more attacks, more secrets uncovered, and Daniel soon learned the darkest truth. The Steel Dawn had made contact with someone beyond Earth. They were not just rebels, they were working with the Draxen. The realization hit him like a blade. Humans were feeding information to the very monsters that would one day burn their world. Betrayal had gone deeper than politics. It had become treason. Daniel stormed into Serenia's chamber, his chest burning. It's not just Earth we fight against, he told her. It's the Draxen too. They already have their claws inside my world. Her silver eyes darkened, her crown glowing faintly. Then the war has already begun, she whispered, and in that moment, Daniel understood the truth. Earth's greatest danger was not only from the skies above, but from the shadows within. The sky over Earth was no longer calm. For weeks the Queen's fleet had hovered like silent guardians, but now another presence entered the stars. Darker, heavier, and filled with menace, the Draxen had arrived. It began with a ripple across the night sky, thousands of black ships emerging from the void. Their forms jagged like claws, their engines burning crimson. They filled the heavens, blotting out the stars. Humanity had seen alien fleets before, but never anything like this. Cities fell silent. Children clung to their parents, soldiers gripped their weapons with trembling hands. On every screen, the image of the Draxen fleet appeared. And for the first time in history, Earth understood what true fear was. Inside the war chamber aboard Serenia's flagship, alarms screamed and maps lit with red markers. Her commanders spoke in urgent tones, their voices calm but fast. Daniel stood at her side, his fists clenched, his heart racing. They came sooner than expected, Serenia said, her silver eyes narrowing. The traitors of Steel Dawn must have guided them here. Daniel's voice was rough. Then Earth has no choice now. They'll see the truth with their own eyes. The ground trembled as the first Draxen warship entered the atmosphere. Fire streaked across the sky. Anti-air defenses fired desperately. But the alien shields absorbed the blows like raindrops against stone. Explosions tore across the coastline. Ships sank into the oceans. Cities screamed. Serenia rose from her seat, her crown glowing brighter than ever. No more shadows, she said, her voice echoing like thunder. The war begins now. Her fleet moved. Blue light streaked across the heavens as her ships clashed with the crimson glow of the Draxen. Space itself became a storm of fire and light. Battleships collided. Fighters swarmed. Missiles burned like comets. Daniel stood on the ground, leading a unit of human soldiers who had chosen to fight alongside her guards. He carried his rifle, his armor battered but ready. Around him stood humans and Luthari side by side, fear and courage mixing in their eyes. The first wave of Draxen soldiers struck the city, towering in black armor, their weapons crackling with red energy. They moved like shadows with claws, merciless and silent. Daniel fired. his shots piercing through the chaos. Beside him, Serenya's guards fought with glowing blades. Their movements fluid like lightning. The streets turned into rivers of fire. Buildings collapsed, skies thundered with engines, yet Daniel felt alive, for the first time in years. He was not just a mechanic or a forgotten soldier. He was fighting for something greater than himself. Through the smoke, he saw Serenya herself. She fought with elegance and fury, her crown shining like a beacon. Her staff of light cut through the Draxan ranks, each swing blasting them back in. Waves of silver fire. The people who once doubted her now watched in awe as she defended their world with her own hands. But the Draxan were endless for every soldier cut down. Another came, for every ship destroyed. 2 more appeared from the void. The battle stretched across land, sea and sky. Humanity fought bravely, but their weapons were weak, their defenses thin. Without Serenya's fleet, Earth would already be burning. Daniel's squad was pushed back into a broken square, surrounded on all sides. Smoke stung his eyes. His rifle overheated. He felt the weight of doom pressing against his chest. Then Serenya appeared beside him, her silver eyes blazing. She raised her staff, and a wave of light exploded outward, tearing through the enemy ranks. The soldiers around Daniel stared in disbelief. The queen herself had come to stand with them. Daniel looked at her, his voice hoarse. "Why fight here? Why risk yourself?" She met his gaze, her voice steady even in the chaos. "Because I am not only queen of my people now," she said. "I am protector of yours too." Her words struck him deeper than any blade. Together, they fought back to back, Daniel's rifle spitting fire, Serenya's staff blazing with silver light. Human soldiers rallied behind them, their fear turning into courage. Their cries filled the burning streets. But even as they pushed forward, Daniel saw the horizon darken. Massive Draxan carriers descended, their size dwarfing entire cities. From their bellies poured thousands more troops. The war had only begun. And already Earth was bleeding. Daniel's mind raced. There was no way to win with guns alone. Something greater had to happen. Some sacrifice, some gamble, or everything would be lost. As night fell, the sky was torn apart by fire. Earth shook. Beneath the weight of the invasion, Daniel stood among the rubble. Blood on his hands, sweat on his brow, and hope burning in his chest. He looked at Serenya, who stood with her crown glowing against the fire. And he realized something. This was not just a war for survival. It was a war for the future. A war that would decide if humanity remained prey or rose as something greater. And in that moment, as the world burned and the stars shook, Daniel whispered to himself, "The Great War has begun." The war had torn Earth apart. Cities burned, skies rained fire, and oceans shook with falling ships. Yet humanity fought on, not alone, but with the Queen of the Luthari and her fleet by their side. Still, the Draxan came like an endless storm, and hope flickered like a candle in the wind. Daniel stood on the front lines, his armor dented, his rifle nearly broken. Every breath was pain, but he refused to stop. Around him soldiers shouted, weapons roared, and the night sky lit with explosions. Beside him, Serenya's silver eyes burned with determination, her staff glowing brighter than the flames around them. The Draxan carriers hovered above the city, massive shadows blotting out the moon. From their bellies poured troops and machines. Daniel knew that if those ships were not destroyed, Earth would fall within hours. Serenya raised her gaze to the sky, her crown blazing with white light. "Their flagship," she whispered. "If we break it, their lines will shatter." Daniel followed her eyes. The flagship was larger than a mountain, its weapons burning crimson. Its shadow stretched across the land like death itself. He swallowed hard. "Then we take it down," he said, his voice rough but steady. Serenya looked at him, her silver eyes softening for a brief moment. "If we go, we may not return," she warned. Daniel met her gaze, sweat dripping from his brow. 10 years ago, I carried you through fire," he said. "Now we carry this world together," the Queen nodded. And together they boarded a small strike craft. Soldiers saluted as they passed. some whispering prayers, others shouting cheers. The engines roared, and the ship cut through the burning sky toward the heart of the Draxan fleet. Enemy fighters swarmed, red beams streaking across the night. Daniel fired from the turret, his shots piercing through the black wings of the enemy. Serenia guided the craft with sharp precision, her hands glowing as if the ship itself obeyed her command. They weaved through fire, through death, through shadows, until the flagship towered before them. The ship docked onto its surface, cutting into the armored hull. Daniel leapt out first, rifle ready. Serenia followed, her staff blazing like a star. Together they pushed through corridors filled with Draxan soldiers. Blades clashed, rifles fired, the halls filled with screams. Daniel fought with the fury of a man who knew this was the end. Serenia moved with grace and wrath, her every strike cutting through the darkness. Finally, they reached the core chamber, a massive sphere pulsing with crimson light, the heart of the Draxan flagship. Dozens of soldiers blocked their path, their armor glowing, their blades humming. Daniel's chest heaved, his rifle nearly empty. "We'll never make it," he whispered. Serenia placed her hand on his shoulder, her voice calm even as death surrounded them. "Then I will," she said, "but I cannot do it without you." The battle erupted. Daniel fought with every drop of strength left in him. His armor cracked, blood spilled, but he held the line. Each step he bought gave Serenia time to reach the core. Her staff blazed as she channeled her power, silver light flooding the chamber. The Draxan roared, blades slashing, but Daniel stood firm. He blocked, he struck, he bled, until one final blow sent him crashing to the floor. His vision blurred, his body weak, but through the haze he saw Serenia raise her staff high. She screamed a word in her ancient tongue, and the staff struck the core. A surge of light exploded outward, shaking the ship, tearing through steel and shadows. The Draxans screamed as their flagship shattered from within. The explosion lit the skies of Earth like dawn. Crimson fire turned to silver light. The Draxan fleet faltered, their lines broken, their shadows scattered. Serenia stood over the ruins, her crown glowing like the first star. Daniel lay at her feet, his breaths shallow but his eyes still burning with life. She knelt beside him, her hands trembling. "Daniel," she whispered, "you gave everything." His voice was weak, but his words were steady. "10 years ago, I saved you," he said slowly. "But today, you saved us all." Tears glimmered in her silver eyes. She pressed her forehead gently against his, whispering words only for him. "You were never just my protector, you were my promise." The battlefield fell silent as the Draxan retreated into the void, their empire broken for now. Humanity stood bloodied but alive, not as prey, but as allies of a queen who had returned for one man and ended up saving an entire world. From that day forward, everything changed. Earth was no longer a forgotten planet on the edge of the galaxy. It was a world bound to the Luthari, a world written into the stars. And at the center of that story was a human soldier who had once carried a blue-skinned girl through smoke and fire. Daniel closed his eyes, his body weak, but his heart at peace. For the promise made in the shadows 10 years ago had been fulfilled, and destiny had been rewritten.